From Nashville, Tennessee, Music City, USA, and the home of hot chicken, it's the Rick Altizer Show. Sit back, buckle up. Rick will talk with the movers, shakers, and creators who put Christ in Christian entertainment. He's a man who's clear so the world can hear. Here's Rick Altizer.
Welcome to the Rick Altizer Show. This is Paul Aldrich. I am your host this week, and I have as my special guest Rick Altizer.
I'm back.
Oh, I'm so glad you found your way to the studio this week, Rick. I'm a musical comedian and a longtime friend of Rick's, and Rick's got a new movie coming out, so I'm interviewing him about his project this time. So, Rick, tell us about your latest movie project.
Yeah, a new movie that we talked about last week's called The Kendrick Brothers, Show Me the Father. Going to be in theaters September 10th. That's 9/10. In theaters all over the country as a regular theatrical release. Which all of the movies I've done prior to this were Fathom events. They were in theaters for one night or two nights. But this is an actual regular theatrical, so this is the first time I've done anything like that. So pretty excited about it, Paul.
You should be excited because very few documentaries make it to theaters. That they just aren't released. Those are usually straight to some sort of streaming service these days. But this one's going to have a chance to really get out there and hopefully get a lot of eyeballs on it because this movie has it's just an impactful movie. Tell us, we talked last week a lot about the heart of the movie. Give us a quick summary of the heart of this, and then we're going to dig into some of the details.
Show Me the Father is a movie about helping people connect with God as Father. For so many of us, we struggle with putting the words perfect and Father together. I call us functional orphans. We're in church, we're married, we have what look like successful marriages, and kids, maybe they love the Lord even, and we're leading worship in men's groups and women's groups and all kinds of different ministries in the church we're involved in. We might even be pastors in the church. Yet, when it comes to do we really believe God is our Father who loves us the way He says He does? Functionally, we're orphans. And so we operate in self-sufficiency, control issues, because we're not trusting God, because we never really had a pattern of a father, an earthly father that we could trust. And so why would we trust God? So trying to help people connect with that. We've got Tony Evans. Pastor Tony Evans is in it. We have the president of Focus on the Family, Jim Daly, is in it. Stephen and Alex Kendrick from the Kendrick Brothers, as well as some football. There's a football story. Very compelling stories. Bring your Kleenexes. That's very emotional.
It is.
It is. It will really, because when you start talking about fathers and fatherhood and getting into the stuff, because we don't really, it's not, there's really nothing sugar-coated here. There's nothing that is would be inappropriate for children, but, tough stories, hard stories.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to fluff it up. We wanted to talk about just real stuff. But when you start talking about dads and fatherhood, it really does open us up emotionally to feelings and things. And the movie is very beautiful, and it has a beautiful message that just leads us to Christ and how when we've seen Him, we've seen the Father.
It is. It's very uplifting, even though you're dealing with some nitty-gritty, deep stuff. But a lot of redemption and just miraculous things. So this is kind of a collection of different folks, pastors, you said, football players, there's
an adoption story, a beautiful adoption story.
It's all pieced together and very tricky to do as a documentary and as a filmmaker because you don't know what you have until you get into it, and then it changes again. So talk us through. You went, and a lot of these are interviews that you set up.
Right.
You're having people either record some of their viewpoints on fatherhood or just bleeding out their own personal
telling their
stories.
Story. Right. Well, yeah, I wanted so there were two elements. I wanted to be very relational, emotional, something that you could really relate to and connect with. I was telling Alex and Stephen, this can't be male-centric. This can't just be a guy thing. We have to be able to communicate to women. We have to have emotion. This needs to be compelling. And Stephen was also wanted that. But, he also wanted teaching elements, some stats, some scriptures. He was wanting to see those elements in it as well. So there was that fine balance of, well, we can't make it a curriculum piece, but too, he wants to be able to make it a tool that people can use and say, hey, if you're struggling as a dad, if you're struggling with your fatherhood issues, watch this movie. It's going to really make an impact in your life. And that's what they do so well is a particular issue. He said to me once, Stephen said, we don't really make movies, we make tools. We make ministry tools. And that really helped me as we were shaping this film. Right. This is something that is really going to help people. That's not just, I hope people are entertained and they love it. Yes. And there's great emotional moments in it that are heartwarming and touching. And you hear Jim Daly's terrible story of his father, but you get this amazing redemptive at the end, what God becomes his father. And it's just beautiful. So then weaving in teaching elements, weaving in story was a fine line. And so the producer, Mark Miller, and myself, we basically edited this together, which was a neat experience for me. I've never done that before. We spent much longer than you normally would editing a movie. We probably, I would say we spent 5 months editing this. Wow. Which in the past I've spent maybe 5 weeks. Right. On a doc, maybe 6. And we did like 5 months. So there was so much back and forth and tweaking and I think you can see it. I think it. Oh, absolutely. When you watch it, it's not like your regular doc that you go see. It's something different.
No, it is. It's so well put together, and there's the art of first you got to capture the stories. You've got to draw the story out from someone, whether it's their teaching elements or their own story. You got to get that. Then you've got to look at all those pieces and put them together in a rhythm that works. And most of it, people don't know. Most of that film is never seen. You bring the pieces together. So talk us through. Just trying to shape the storyline is crazy hard.
Getting the story was the big issue. So I had all of my interviews transcribed. So 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper. I've got my interviews transcribed. I've got a stack. What is that? 7 inches, 8 inches of transcripts, maybe 9 inches tall of transcripts. So I had to go through all of that, and then I highlighted things that I think I might want to use. Then I took all the highlights out of my transcripts and made another document with just the highlights. Then I highlighted that again. And then I pulled those out again and made a third document with just. And then I highlighted it again a third time. So I went through 3 rounds of cut, just this. And then, so after my third time of highlighting all the things I thought I might want to use, then I put them all, each little segment or each line that they would have on a 4x6 index card. And then I organized those index cards and had we're in my office, but have a little whiteboard up on the wall. I started writing out chapters, what I think the chapters would be, what the stories are. And then I have an index card box. So I start moving things around in that index card box of how we're going to start it, how we're going to, this goes here, this goes there, we'll have this teaching element here. Well, it kind of moving stuff around. And I spent about 2.5 months on just that. And so that's kind of what we need to craft, get that story together and how it all plays together. But then we started editing. Like I said, we've been doing it for 5 months. And so then with Mark and myself, then we start moving stuff around. So my index card box starts, then it goes on to a timeline on a computer where we have it all laid out. Then we start moving it around even more and doing more stuff with it. So then Mark was very, very involved in that. Mark Miller, who's been on the show, but was very involved in crafting that, getting that storyline to lay. So where do the teaching elements come? When did the story come? How do we tell the story? We've got some pretty big payoffs in the movie where you go, what? And your mind kind of explodes. You go, oh, no, I didn't see that coming. So there's a couple of those in the film that are pretty big. And so how do we do that? How is that told? So, again, working with the Kendricks was great because last time I checked, they're pretty successful filmmakers. So they would, they let Mark and I kind of get on with it, and then they would come in on the back end and then kind of tweaked and made stuff. But it was great to have that team. I think it was a good team that I felt just, what an honor. I mean, how does it happen?
Yeah. Well, and a big step up for you because you wore a lot of the hats or all the hats on the projects to date with Shonda, Russ Taft's project, those kinds of things. And it's a different thing. Now you're working in tandem with someone. You've got to find a rhythm, and you've each got to pour in that same passion to detail because that's what makes this movie work. You didn't start off with, here's the story arc. You record it, and then you've got to just move and move again, and then what you've got written is one thing, but when you see it on the screen, oh my gosh, we got to, you have to just matching that so that there's a flow that's understandable. So that, as you group things into themes, different interviews to cover the various, subject segments of the movie, chapters, if you will.
And how it feels is so key. So as an editor, I didn't really know, because I really haven't edited like I have on this film. Mm-hmm. I haven't been as involved in the editing. And I have like this physical butterfly inside of my stomach. That's the only way I can describe it, but I can feel when it's connecting emotionally.
Yeah.
I can feel, and that is such a blend of music, the edit, the story, the B-roll you use. So let's say like I'm interviewing somebody, I can't just have them sit there talking head.
Right.
We have this other imagery that's happening as they're talking. Mm-hmm. So the blend of all of those things together create. And it's an interesting tightrope and balance of how you tell that story. But I have this little butterfly in me of when it hits, when it's emotional, when it's strong, I can feel it. I can physically feel it as I'm watching the edit.
Yeah.
So that was kind of and I didn't really know that, I didn't know I could do that. But, there are those moments many times throughout this film, bring Kleenex, because there are these moments where there's this truth of God as my loving Father connecting in like this really powerful way, hitting us in this new way. And so to be able technically to craft that, without it being hokey, forced. And we've all seen the Christian films where they do that, where it's like, okay,
you don't want to paint on the message.
Here's the time where they're going to, now they're going to share the gospel, and we're kind of out of the movie all of a sudden. And we're, whereas in this movie, I shared last week, Alex said, where are we going to share the gospel in this film? I said, from frame one to the last frame. Every frame of this movie is going to be about the gospel. Yeah. And so it is a natural telling. I don't think it feels forced, we're forcing it on. But it's very, very powerful in the way it's done because it's real. It isn't anything that's manufactured. It's happening naturally.
And just honoring the story. I mean, because you feel a responsibility when these people have been gracious enough to be interviewed, and now you are going to share their story to the world, and what you layer over them as they're talking. And this, you have to make everyone look great, appropriate and true.
And here's Jim Daly. A father was someone who would hurt you. A father is someone who lied to you. Yeah. A father was someone who disappointed you. That's what he saw a father as.
Yes.
And then to not candy coat that.
Right.
To show the hardness of that. And then towards the end, when he has this experience with God as his father in this really powerful way, it's so amazing to see how God, through his life, God fathered him when he didn't have a father. And, so those moments are so powerful. But the telling of that, how we place that, how we do that, there was a lot of craft involved.
Oh, incredible. And it's like as if you were given 6 books and told, okay, blend these now into one consistent story. It's like, no, there's 6 separate books.
But
it's like, no, you got to do everybody's story. And honor all these books properly.
But the way we did that was there was one story.
Yeah.
There was one story, which was the search for a father and the need for a father and how important that need is in all of us,
Yeah.
and that God is that Father. So that is the story. You know, it's his story, and it's about him. Show me the Father. That's what the movie is. We're showing you the Father.
Yeah.
So even though there's these different stories, there's a football element, Eddie George, and some NFL stuff is in it. Different people, different things that have happened, and very compelling stories that bring in. But through it all, it's the same story. It's one story about the fatherhood of God. So what an amazing... For me, you know, there are a couple of moments. I shared this with you over when we had lunch today. We're at the Southern Baptist Convention. There's 800 pastors. We showed the movie. You know, they gave this great ovation, and so up on stage afterwards, we have a Q&A. Alex Kendrick is standing on my left. Stephen Kendrick standing on my right. There's 800 people in the audience. I'm on stage and I'm holding a microphone. And I'm standing there looking. I've got the microphone in my hand. There's Stephen and Alex Kendrick on either side of me. And I had this just happened a couple weeks ago, and I had this very vivid, I can still remember when it happened. I go, how does this happen?
Yeah.
How do I stand? How am I standing on the stage with a microphone in my hand? How does this even happen?
Right.
This is God. This was just the Lord. I mean, this was God. God did this. So very humbling to be able to say, I directed a Kendrick Brothers movie, which they never, Alex has directed all their movies. So how did that happen? You know, only God, he gets all the glory, all to him.
Yeah.
So,
and I'll just say, you know, we've been friends for decades, and I've seen you through a lot of different seasons. I know some of your own father story and your family story, and but as an artist, I know you as a storyteller, and so it's sort of like, you know, for such a time as this, you know, is really a part of this, because your ability as a songwriter, and then all of a sudden transitioning into telling stories in movies and film, capturing Shonda Pierce's chapters of her life, Russ Taff's amazing story, and all the parts of that weren't pretty, but you honored their story. And now to take these several stories and blend them together, everything, you know, had built for this time. And obviously the Kendrick Brothers saw something in you, because they would not have handed the reins to somebody they didn't think was up to the task. They didn't have to do that. They saw you could do this better. You could tell their story better than they could. And with all their, you know, experience and fame and clout and everything. And so I think there is just this thing that they saw, and I've seen in you as a storyteller, and you nailed it with this movie.
Well, praise the Lord. And you know, again, there was a team involved. Mark Miller, again, with the editing, and then having Alex and Stephen to bounce stuff off of.
Yeah.
And you know, towards the end there, Stephen got very involved and just wanted to make sure things were the way he wanted them. And so it was good to have that. And what I learned was just the importance of what we call B-roll. You know, how important that was. We got a lot of NFL footage from the NFL, which is an amazing story, because the NFL footage is not cheap. And, you know, we got a good deal. The person there watched it and was with her husband and was touched, moved. So, I mean, here we are. The person at the NFL is getting ministered to and touched by this movie.
Yeah, I love it.
You know, which was that kind of stuff. When you see that kind of stuff happening, it's like, praise God, this is awesome. But to see, you know, you go and you do an interview, and, you know, there's lighting involved and the right camera. And what I try to do with my interviews is I don't want to be able to bring a big crew.
Right.
I don't want it to be like a production where it looks like a production, or it feels like a big production. I want the interviewee to feel comfortable, like it's just a conversation. I don't want them to feel like they're on. So I try to keep a real small crew, small lighting rig. I don't want a big deal. It looks great, but you know, we didn't overdo it. And I think that's important. I think it's important to we did it in people's homes where they were comfortable.
Yep.
And I think that comes through in the interviews.
Absolutely.
I think when you're interviewing somebody, and then, I don't go in with questions when I interview someone. I listen. So I pay attention because so many times they'll say something and one thing will lead to another. And so then I can bring up different issues with them to get them to talk about, maybe help connect some dots that I'm hearing in the story and the storyline. So, yeah, I might do a YouTube video on something on just the interview process. And there's a real art. I'm learning. There's an art in the interview. The interview is a thing all to itself. And then once you get those interviews, you get those. Because I had people say, I've never heard Tony Evans talk like this. I've never heard this tone from him.
Right.
It's a very soft, contemplative.
Yeah,
gentle.
he wasn't flipping the "Hey, I'm speaking to the arena" switch. He was just talking.
And he was
1-to-1.
And he was sharing his story, and it was very much like you just sitting at the table with somebody having a conversation, and that's what I really wanted. And I think we got that with everybody.
I do too.
It felt really comfortable, and so when you do that, then you can get the stuff, and the tears start coming and different stuff like that are just so powerful.
And that's a director of a documentary. It's different because you've got to establish that tone consistently with all of your interviews to capture that so that you can put the pieces together. If somebody's just performing, you'll never get to use it.
And you can feel it. They're just spouting off lines or just, And so I would, if I ever felt that, because a lot of these guys are professional speakers.
Right.
And so speaking is what they do. And so they can kind of get into their professional speaking mode.
Yeah.
So to be able to just say, hey, let's just make this just a conversation. And, just to kind of tell me from your heart. And then they all responded great to that. And then once we get those interviews, which is the first part, then to find things to cover it with, to find footage,
all the shots,
and going out and shooting stuff.
It's so well done. All the B-roll, the extra pictures. It's there. I hope people will you just listening, go see this movie September 10th. All right. 9/10. 9/10. Come see this movie.
And pray for us, please.
Yes.
Please pray for the movie. It's going to really touch. It's going to help people, especially people who struggle with the issue of fatherhood in their own life. Right. It's going to be powerful for them. So could you pray for this movie to have a revival of fatherhood in our nation? 9/10. Set a reminder on your phone at 9/10. Every day to pray for the movie on 9/10 in a theater near you. The Kendrick Brothers, Show Me the Father. And Paul, we're out of time again. Can you believe it? Man, this goes quick.
That's good stuff, buddy.
Hey, thank you, Paul, for doing this and being on the show and
absolutely
interviewing me. Let me talk about the movie. But
love it.
For those of you, you can go to my podcast, The Rick Altizer Show. I've got 150 shows on there. Paul's on about 8 of them. You can hear great comedy from Paul. You can also go to paulaldrich.com and get more info on him, Aldrich. And Paul, we're going to see you again. I'm sure I'll have you on again soon.
Look forward to it.
Thanks. If there's a show you've missed, you can go to my website, rickaltizer.com, and catch up. Or you can listen to my podcast in iTunes or wherever you hear your podcasts. Just search for The Rick Altizer Show. Altizer is spelled Altizer. I want to thank you for listening. Hey, would you tell a friend about this show and share the love? Be sure to check us out again next week as we discuss how we communicate the gospel through media to our culture. Let's be clear so the world can hear. I'll talk to you next week. Thanks for listening.
There is therefore now no condemnation to those who are